When I first began communicating with the man who would be my master, I was simply nervous to message someone new. My anxiety translated into slight formality, similar to emails I might send for work, admittedly with an entirely different topic. Because the responses I received were written with the same tone, we continued this rhythm. My previous, albeit limited, interactions had focused primarily on sex, almost instantly moving to "what do you want?" and "when can we make it happen?" This slower pace, his attempt to actually learn more about me and about my husband, was much more my speed, and actually much more intriguing. I also appreciated the physical distance between us, after having the previous experience here in town. It was nice to be sure our secret was safe. Between the distance and our schedules, the first available date for us to meet was a couple of months away. I was able to relax enough to enjoy the messages without feeling the pressure of performing immediately. Simultaneously, the anticipation of the event itself was building with each passing day. Over the next few weeks, it was surprising to learn how much my master and my husband would remind me of each other. They both focused on power dynamics just as much as they focused on physical sex. When we shared more photos, I learned they also had similar builds. It was a bit like having two sides of a coin, one to dominate and the other to serve. My master would ask how our FLR was progressing, and I would share my latest challenges or success. He would offer his advice if I seemed to be struggling with a specific aspect. He sent me pictures from a fishing trip, and I sent him pictures walking my dog in the woods. I've never been particularly good with taking or sending provocative photos, and that didn't seem to be a deal breaker for my master. I think he realized I was slowly opening up. My husband and I had previously discussed what kind of photos I would share and when. I'd never taken naked photos at all, and I didn't want to send them to someone I hadn't met. My husband would be the one to take any photos I would share, so I would always have a second opinion before I did anything questionable. I also realized my master enjoyed my descriptions of my husband's punishment. He would inquire if my husband had misbehaved, then how I handled it. My husband's misbehavior was largely a result of testing my commitment to FLR more than anything else, but that in itself was rather frustrating. My master would offer his advice, and my husband would read every message I received. When I composed my response, my husband preferred that I not describe him in certain terms that might give my master the impression our marriage was not entirely stable. In hindsight, I completely understand his viewpoint. At the time, we were not communicating clearly. I didn't understand what was wrong with the words I used in those specific sentences. At this point in our relationship, I was feeling an urgency to respond to my master's messages when I received them. It was taking me quite a while to compose a message up to my now high standards of erotic literature while also balancing my husband's request for editorial power. Simultaneously, my husband was starting to feel neglected, and rightfully so. My attention was shifting to my master. My master eventually decided to flex his power remotely. I'd been very careful not to disappoint him because I was secretly terrified that his version of punishment was more severe than I wanted to experience. The first time I disappointed him, I sent a carefully posed photo as an apology. When I disappointed him by responding later than usual, my punishment was to avoid any sort of sexual touch until we met in person approximately 2 weeks from that date. I wasn't supposed to let my husband pleasure me or kiss me, and I wasn't to pleasure myself. As my master, he had every right to issue such a punishment because he owned me, and I owned my husband, meaning we were both owned by my master. With the continuing messages, my frustration was intense. Within a couple of days, my husband and I realized he was becoming collateral damage. My husband was being isolated through this punishment by my avoiding any touch whatsoever. I wasn't holding his hand, leaning against him, hugging him, or anything. He was not handling it well, and that wasn't really going to work for us. We discussed the punishment and modified it slightly, recognizing what was sexual touch and what was not. Communication has always been an important component in our marriage, and my husband and I are only able to explore this journey because we continue to work through difficult moments. It's too easy to get caught up in emotion and not realize what the other person is experiencing. Communication is necessary in order to recalibrate. My master was very understanding and agreed with our adjustment. Please like and click subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner.